Okay, so people who appreciated the executive summary from last week, so I thought I'd do another one. I did a shoe off with all the Peg Turbos and the Peg Plus, and I managed to run pretty much the same pace in each one. But bizarrely, the one I ran the fastest in was the Peg Turbo Next Nature, which a lot of people don't even count as a Peg Turbo. So just goes to show sometimes that maybe it isn't the shoe, and it maybe is just you and how things turn out on the day. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and like and subscribe on that, and see you in the next one then. Bye. Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay. Welcome once again to St Mary's Church in Bentworth in Hampshire. Now I've come once again to do another shoe off. This time I'm going to do all the Pegasus Turbos and the Pegasus Plus. So we've got the original Pegasus 35 Turbo here from 2018. We've got my latest version of the Pegasus Turbo 2. I think they've got these in 2020, but they came out originally in 2019. I've got the Pegasus Turbo Next Nature, which some people seem to even forget was a turbo. I very much think that it is. I did 170 miles in these. And we've got the most recent Pegasus Pluses. So what I'm going to do is the same mile circuit I did last week, and I'm going to try for sub-3 pace again. I think I'll do them in the obvious order, won't they? Start with the oldest first, and these are done over 500 miles, so it'll be quite a good test to see whether I can still run them at all. Go on to the Pegasus Turbo 2s here. These have done less than 100 miles, so should be okay. These, as I said, the Next Nature's done about 170 miles, and the Pegasus Plus has done about 30 miles so far. And I think last week I did about 6:45 for this, feeling quite tired. So it'll be an interesting test to see whether I can actually go as well. So the weather's not looking too bad for a late September day. And yeah, I've got a bit of daylight left. I'm only doing 4 today. We'll start off with only doing 4, and there'll be no jokers today. If I fail, I'll just have to keep going on until I've finished it all up. So let's get it all up done. I've got the Pegasus 41s here on in nice Volt colour. I hope it's not too wet out there, because it has been apparently a tornado nearby in Aldershot. So yeah, it is a bit wet underground, but very much a nice summer's day. Right, let's get on with this then. Well, this is exactly what you don't want to see when you've got your bright Volt colourway Pegasus 41s on. I think I have to try and go up the side here. I've got to get to the end of that bit there, just tick off this road. So I think I've got to do it, haven't I? Made it just, but I've got to go back that way as well. Although look at these shoes, ruined, ruined. Plenty of pacemakers up here as well. Made it. Okay, so I've done a little warm up in the Pegasus 41, not too bad. Do feel a bit stiff today, so making my excuses early. I did a tough bike session yesterday and did another one on Wednesday. So yeah, not quite sure how it would go, but I always have to make excuses before you start. Anyway, the Pegasus Turbo 35's on foot, aka the first version of the Pegasus Turbos. And yeah, they feel like a lot softer feeling than the Pegs 41s. Feel like they're a bit narrower, and I feel they fit me well. There's a nice sort of padded tongue there, it was in this one. And a lot more padding in this one than it had in the next version. So right, let me just do a little few strides up and down the church sort of road here. There's the church that I did the intro in front of. I did the far bench last week, and I did the nearer bench this week, just through the War Memorial there. So yeah, a slightly narrower bench for the second one, so I had less shoes today. Right, let's get these strides done then. Yeah, just feeling a bit stiff today, but yeah, we'll see how we go. Do feel nice, these Peg Turbos, considering I've done over 500 miles in them. They feel amazingly sort of like soft still and responsive. So yeah, good stuff. Maybe the older versions are perhaps better than the new ones, but we'll arrange to see what we actually do in these little runs. Okay, so we're ready to start. Just a reminder, it's exactly a mile circuit. I'm going to start here, I'm going to finish literally over there by that sort of wall, which I've measured to be pretty much exactly a mile. At least it comes up that way on my Garmin 965, and I've got a 955 on as well. So I wear 2 watches. I wear one continuously so I can time the rest. I'll try and do the 9-minute rest I did last week just to sort of get it the same way. And yes, I'm going to try and keep this sort of comfortably hard. I'm interested to see how I go, because I do feel like a lot stiffer than last week. I was a bit fresh. I had the day off last Friday, so whereas yesterday I did a hard bike session. So, but I'm only doing 4 today, I know. So make it, yeah. So runners always need to have excuses, don't they? Let's see how this first one goes. And it's sort of mainly downhill until about the last sort of 1 minute 15, when it goes up about 3-4%. So yeah, you have to sort of make your time, as it were, in the first 5 minutes, and then hang on up the hill. Right, let's go on with it. I'll see if I can report halfway. Okay, we're on pace. Must say, these do feel nice, this sort of thing. Do feel some ground feel for sure, but they do feel comfortably soft. I think the React foam acts as sort of mine, a very plate. So yeah, let's see what we got at the end. Okay, first one done. about 6:37, I think, so that compared favourably to the 6:30 I did last week in the speed. Okay, this is a 500-mile shoe at 6 years old, so yeah, not bad, is it? Very similar weight though to the Speed 4, and I think, as I said, making my excuses, but I'm just slightly more tired than I was this time last week, so let's see how we go on that one. So Pegasus Turbo 2's in next, which will be the lightest of the 4 shoes by some way, actually. I'll put all the weights up here for your reference. But yeah, well, I noticed that. I think I will certainly notice the lack of padding in the Turbo 2. I've had to tighten them up more than I did in the Turbo 1. But good start anyway. Certainly was a lot looser fit in the Turbo 2. Basically what they did, they got rid of all the padding on the tongue and all the padding at the back. But then the upper then, obviously then I had to put a bit more folding in it. So a lot lighter, but just didn't fit me quite as well. But I did most of my miles in the Turbo 2 because I only had like one pair of the Turbo 1s. So yeah, maybe that's because the Turbos 1 seem to last forever. And it's amazing, I don't think I've ever been in a shoe that I've worn for so many miles. There's very few shoes I've actually worn past that one. That may be the most ever. But by then it'd be normally like completely battered. But yeah, it just still seemed like it was, I wouldn't say as new, but it felt like it was, yeah, it's like one you've been wearing 1,500 miles. It was amazing. Maybe the Zoom X back in those days was just more premium, and that's why the shoes were so harder to get and relatively expensive, because the prices haven't really gone up at all, have they? I think the Pegasus Pluses now are the same price that the Peg Turbos were originally, something like that. Very little in it. 6 years on, all the shoe prices have rocketed up generally. Yeah, I do feel this is a bit lighter. I do feel like there's definitely less sponge. Maybe now sort of, having done that first run, I'm starting to get the wobbly legs feeling already. Because, but in theory, this should be a fast one. I put quite a lot of effort into that first one just to get a good grounding. And you've only got 4 of these, haven't I? So one's the second one. It's always a good psychological feeling that when you've done this one, you're halfway and you kind of got over the worst of it, as it were. But yeah, I'm going to have 9 minutes recovery, so I've got another 2 minutes to go. So exactly the mirror conditions I did last week to see if I can compare the times. Okay, very similar time, about 6:30 pace, and about a third of a mile to go. Yeah, doing all right. Feel very similar. As one of us this week, all the shoes should feel a lot more similar, shouldn't they? Okay, Peg Turbo 2's done. I think it was almost exactly the same pace, maybe in a second quicker, 6:36, I think, maybe 6:37 on the first one. But yeah, slightly higher heart rate as you might expect on the second one, but I think that will mirror what happened last week. I feel my legs are sort of quite dead from this cycling I've done this week, so yeah, always like to get these excuses in, but the pace is all right, and in a way, it's going to be a far more equitable test, isn't it? We've perhaps got the shoe that most people would think will do by far the worst, the Peg Turbo Next Nature coming up. But yeah, we'll see how we go. It was a good start. I think the Turbo 2s, I prefer the fit of the Turbo 1s, but just psychologically having that slightly less weight helps. Although to be fair, I didn't perhaps really notice it on foot. Maybe if I sorted them around and done that one, the first one, and then gone into the heavier shoes, second one, it might be more of a difference. But yeah, sometimes fit's more important than just saving a few grams here and there. But there was quite a difference actually between the 1 and 2. I think about 30 grams, something like that. I'll put the weights back up there again for reference. Right, let's get these Next Natures on. Okay, the Next Natures on. They actually do feel like the most comfortable of the 3 so far, but also feel like I've got a bit more shoe on here. Perhaps they do feel a bit more like a lifestyle shoe until I actually get running. But having said that, I can feel like the size Zoom X here just feels slightly stiffer maybe. I've had to cut the laces in these ones, so I've got the very short laces there, but if anything, they probably look the narrowest on foot. I think when they first came, I had to do in the laces so much that I had so much excess that I thought rather than try and do a double knot or whatever, I would just sort of cut them off, and it saves a few grams, doesn't it? Yeah, it looks like they're well worn, so don't make a heap of noise, do they, unlike the Alpha 5.3s? I'll have to judge this one by how tired I feel, because I think those first 2 ones were quite hard, but I'm just trying to get this effort in terms of like 4 by 1 mile. What could I do at the moment that's like not ridiculously out and out, flat out, but is equally not a jog? Because I don't think much point testing sort of fast shoes going slowly, as some people seem to do. See if we can get somewhere around 6:45, because that's what I did in the Pegasus Pluses, which will be the target when I go back into them in a sec. Right, all set, nearly. Well, I've got, how long have we got? Another 2 minutes yet, so time to relax. And it's not quite dark yet, but so I think today I'll be able to finish this in the daylight, so Sue will be pleased to hear that. She's gone to Portugal, would you believe? So I'm looking home looking after Daisy. Well, obviously not at the moment, but we'll do later. Well, what do you want to know? Fastest one so far, I think about 6:31. Maybe I was trying a bit harder in those just to get up to speed, but yeah, just goes to show sometimes, doesn't it, that shoes don't really matter that much. It's more you than the shoes and how much effort you want to put into them. Yeah,
I sort of stumbled a bit for the first few steps. I think I just sort of found my footing. They sort of feel flatter in a way, these shoes. Maybe slightly harder to flex, although it's all relative terms. They do flex quite well, but once you got into them, I almost forgot they had Next Natures on and just felt like the other two. Just felt like the upper was a bit different. I think now the Peg Pluses will feel interesting because if anything, these don't feel as low to the ground as I remembered. Maybe it's just the fact I'm going at a good speed. I'm basically going at recent half marathon speed rather than PB. PB would be like 5:30, can't do that anymore. Yeah, so interesting, isn't it? So let's see if I get one more in these done. And I think I'm definitely trying harder than I was last week though so far, or definitely feel like I need to try harder. But yeah, getting these paces actually more dialed in. I'm not really trying to run the same pace either, I'm just trying to sort of run as sort of comfortably hard as I can. Obviously this isn't marathon effort or anywhere near it. I'm going a lot faster and just haven't done any mileage for that sort of thing. I'm like 26 miles in total a week rather than 26 in one go. Right, let's get them pluses on and wrap this up. I do feel my hamstring a bit as well, so just being slightly cautious there. So I hope I get around this one. I think that's why I'm going to stick it to 4 this time. Quite a while ahead, as they say. Okay, Peg Plus on. To me, they do feel like more of the plushest of the shoes now. Maybe they have changed the nature of them from being like a racer trainer type shoe to more being a lightweight daily trainer. I just instantly feel like there's a bit more sort of squish in these, maybe just a bit less sort of get up and go responsiveness. But yeah, my legs are now quite tired, so I think this is going to be interesting. See how hard they can push this, because I pushed those Next Natures I think quite hard. That's why I didn't get the camera out, because I felt like I'll just get on with the run and report at the end. And now my legs do very wobbly. So yeah, let's see how we go. But I think there's an element when I do sessions that once you've got dialed into a pace, unless you completely collapse, then hopefully you can keep it going. And here's the last one, but I won't have the lift of the Vaporflies this week. And I didn't quite manage the Next Natures as fast as the Vaporflies, I don't think. I'll just check the segments up there in a minute, but yeah, very pleased with that one, definitely for sure, because nice feeling to get them all closely dialed in, isn't it? All right, I've got another minute to go and then we're off. Last one, thank goodness for that. It's always a relief to get through these sessions. Okay, all done. I think it was a very similar time in the Peg Plus there to the first two. And I think we've got all of them within about 5 seconds of each other. So yeah, that was good. I think I was trying just a bit harder than the last one. I think I just felt really tired. Glad I'm not doing 7 today because I really had enough now after 4. And so slightly worried about my hamstring. So just walking along the road. This is the first part of the course, which is probably the flattest bit of it. And yeah, so a nice little start to get you going fairly straight. And yeah, so as a session and a shoe off, I think that was good. As a shoe off, I suspect that we'll find that there really isn't anything in between them. But yeah, interesting to look at the data, see if we saw any difference when I was tarring there in the last 2. And yeah, at least the running is sort of coming along. So I'll do a little bit of a walk, warm down. Not sure that actually running anymore is going to actually give me any particular benefit. But yeah, I just want to sort of say a bit more about the Peg Plus. I don't know whether it's just the fact I wore them 4th, but they do feel slightly more plush, as I said. And they are heavier, reminded of the weights there, but they're 50 grams heavier than the Turbo 2s, for instance. So that's quite a different type of shoe, isn't it? I mean, it's around about 330 compared to about 280. And yeah, you sort of feel that, not necessarily in the actual on-feet feel, but in the sort of the padding and stuff and the general sort of feel of them. But yeah, I mean, to me, it feels like the React in the Turbo 1 and Turbo 2 helped as a bit of like a little plate, which kind of allowed you to sort of feel the Zoom X, but also have that sort of response that you get in, say, the Vaporflies. So to me, it felt like the Peg Plus is not really an improvement. It's just sort of like a slight variation on what they had before. They're all very similar. I think all these times show that I was able to run just as fast in all of them. And I think it's a bit of a turn up for the books that the Turbo Next Nature was the fastest. Maybe there's an element, did I try any more harder in that? Well, I don't think I did really. I didn't pick up the camera, but I didn't pick up the camera on the last one. So, and I always picked up the camera when I was going downhill when it was the easiest to get it out, make a quick talk to camera and put it back in again. And you didn't feel like I was working. I didn't want to fit the camera out on the last hill when I was going up a 3-4% hill, trying to work with my arms in the last minute when I was really pushing it. But yeah, it kind of shows that the Peg Plus is a very useful addition back in the Nike line. But yeah, if you had the original Turbo or the Turbo 2s lying around, I don't think you can really get anything better here. I don't think the fact that it's all Zoom X now is a bit more marketing than it ever was. You also thought the React was like a dead foam, and when it was some of the Pegasus, like the Pegasus 37, I thought was a very disappointing shoe, and that's someone who actually likes Pegasus 41 and stuff like that. So that did feel like a very stiff brick, and the Zoomfly 3, which is all React as well, that felt even worse. So having just that sliver of react in the Turbo 1 and Turbo 2 did seem to make a lot of difference. And it's a bit like ZoomX when you feel it in the next percent compared to, say, the Vomeros or the Invincibles. Although it says ZoomX on the side, it feels completely different, but obviously they engineer it for different purposes. So there's no point buying an Invincible expecting you to get like a Vaporfly feel with a bit more sponge. So it doesn't make any sense, does it? I mean, back in the day, you'd never buy an everyday trainer and hope to get a racing flat feel. Nowadays, people seem to think, well, I buy a shoe and it can do everything from a marathon to a flat out mile. I think, well, it doesn't really work like that, does it? It seems that's what people seem to want these days. Anyway, we've got a nice little pond over here. Maybe it's a bit dark to have a look. But anyway, it's just a few thoughts on the Peg Plus and generally think about these things in general terms. Right, I better get back to the car now. It's dark now, more or less. I think it's gone so far. Let's come look at the spreadsheet.
Okay, so here's the spreadsheet. Now, some very interesting results here. I didn't really deliberately try to run these miles at the same pace, but I more or less have. The one exception was just a few seconds quicker, was bizarrely the Next Nature, which would be the last shoe you would think to be the fastest. I can't honestly say that it's actually the fastest. I think just for some reason I must have found a few seconds on that one, but I think what you would say overall, that there's actually no difference at all in the actual performance terms of these four shoes, which I think is what you kind of would expect, because they're all very similar. They've all got the same drop. The weights are all fairly similar, unlike last week when I was going into different shoes of different drops, and the big Alpha Flies then dropping down to the Mac 6s and the Rebel V4s, which had a lot lower drop. It felt like I was sort of trying on a different shoe each time. In these four, I didn't feel like there was much difference radically between each one, which kind of helped, I think, because I was feeling a lot stiffer from the bike session the day before. So let's look at the stats in a bit more detail. As you normally expect, my heart rate rose very gradually, but I'll put up the splits from last week a bit later on. But what I can say here, that these average heart rates and max heart rates for the whole mile were actually very, very similar to what they were last week, almost down to the actual second. And the times here, I did a 6:28 last week in the Vaporfly, so this Next Nature one was actually the second quickest of the 11 ones that I've done, 7 last week and 4 this week, so that was interesting as well. But yeah, I mean, if you look here, the recovery heart rates are all basically the same. They all started sort of like well under 100 heart rates, so I had 9 minutes rest between each of these ones. And things like the ground contact time, bizarrely, were identical in all 4 shoes. I would say that by the time of the Next Nature and the Peg Plus, my legs were feeling a lot more, and I was glad I was only doing 4 reps this week rather than 7. I did start to feel my hamstring a bit on the right side, so I was a bit wary of pushing it too much. But having said that, I was quite relieved to sort of actually get through these, and no time did I feel like I had to ease off, but there was just the odd twinge now and again. Interestingly, the ground contact time balance this week was well over to the left. Now the left is the problem foot I've got, so again it kind of shows that perhaps that's part of the problem. I'm naturally leaning over to the left more than the right, but at least that's consistent, and at least as I'm not trying to put weight away from the left, although with a right hamstring tweak maybe I was trying to push away from that a bit. The cadences were all again very similar. So editing Tim here, actually the cadence I got wrong on the spreadsheet there in the Peg Plus. It should actually have been 183, not 182, so that makes a lot more sense, does it? And then they actually are basically all the same. And similar with the stride length, I think Garmin tries to approximate that from the data it's got, and there may be some rounding error in here. And the loads, one of the Next Nature seemed to be a lot more than the other 3. I think that's partly because for some reason the elevation on the Garmin Forerunner 965 doesn't seem to be working quite right at the start. It seems to drop it a bit low, and then by the time at the end it sort of got to where it's got to be. So I think that's why you're seeing on a circuit we start and finish at the same place, that the ascent is a lot higher than the descent, which is actually not correct. I think these should be about 10 metre ascent, 10 metre descent to start and finish at the same place. So that may be why the training load is a bit higher than it perhaps could be, partly because of the fact that the heart rate was a bit higher by then, but also the fact that there was perhaps more unbelievable ascent in these than there really was. The actual metrics for myself, similar. I weighed myself this morning at 76.1, but that was after a nice tea last night. So it's all around 75, 76. So still trying to get that back down to 73, but I'm not rushing too much there. If you go on to make this a very, very busy spreadsheet now, I'll put up in addition here the 7 runs from last week and all the segment details as well, and also the splits. I actually recreated the first segment because I think that it's actually started a bit from where I actually did, so I wanted to make these average paces a bit more accurate, and it also made the average gradient -0.1, so pretty much flat, I would say, for that for opening 2 minutes. So interesting, if you look here, some of these max heart rates, average heart rates, after the first two where I felt like I was getting into things, look how similar these are. The third and fourth one in the Next Nature and the Peg Plus, very similar to the third and fourth one in the Max 6 and Alpha Fly 3. It's quite interesting that I actually managed to run faster in the Peg Plus this time, 6:37 compared to 6:45, although it was the fourth one on Saturday yesterday compared to the sixth one last week. And obviously I had more reps last week as well, didn't I? Didn't obviously get the lift from wearing the Vaporfly 3s. I did sort of vaguely think about doing a final one, but yeah, as I said, with that hamstring issue, I didn't want to push my luck. Kind of thought I'd actually achieve what I wanted to achieve, which was showing that by and large all the Pegasus Turbos and the Peg Pluses are all basically the same in terms of performance. If you look at some of these splits here, interestingly, actually the Next Nature one, I had the fastest of the opening 2 minutes. I didn't really deliberately try to do that, and I had a bit of a heart rate spike there to 153, so I've kind of taken that out. So then you can see here that the maximum heart rates and average heart rates are all sort of comparable to before. But yeah, it's interesting, like even a week on, when I'm sort of feeling slightly differently, that how similar these sort of average heart rates were in times. And I think that's an element of getting to know the circuit and getting to know exactly how far you can push based on your fitness. But I think it works out quite well that if I sort of start off at a nice speed and then keep it going, the second segment here is just very slightly downhill. Then the third one here, you get a very little rise, but then you get a nice sort of like a minute sort of dip down before you finish up Church Street up towards where the old Star Inn is sort of all uphill, and it just flattens out slightly at the top when you're really, really tired. So I didn't try to cane it up the hill, but also tried to make sure that I didn't sort of ease off. So that's why I tried to make sure that I didn't go flat out up the final bit, just to make sure that these max heart rates get ridiculously high. Having said that, I think I was actually quite struggling to go any harder than I did, so I think I actually paced these ones very well, and the fact that now all these times are much of a muchness. But yeah, I think it was interesting that all these Peg Turbos, Next Natures, perhaps it just shows that those 10mm drops with that slightly amount of ground feeling is better off than these sort of 5mm drops where I feel like I'm not so naturally running faster. And it was kind of odd that I managed to run exactly the same time in the Next Nature as I did in the Alpha Fly 3. I don't think anyone would really have forecast that, would they? And that's pretty much for the same heart rates as well. So yeah, just goes to show sometimes that if you put your mind to it in a shoe, you can do whatever you want to do. And it's certainly a shoe that Next Nature is one that I feel like is one that is a bit underrated in certain terms. I think a lot of people dismissed it as being a lifestyle shoe. Yeah, and I did say in the video it was the most comfortable one of the four in some respects. I think it just sort of slightly narrower fit for me once I pulled in the laces. And yeah, so maybe I should get that one out again. Not really one for the winter though, with the upper in the Next Nature. You're going to get feet soaked straight away, so maybe one to just do the odd sort of test on now and again. Anyway, so what do you make of all this? Were you a bit surprised that all these Peg Towers and Peg Pluses were so similar, and how well they compare to the faster actual racing shoes? Is that something you found yourself? Have you got the Peg Plus yet? Do you miss the Peg Turbos? Are you finding the Peg Plus sort of different to the Turbos if you've had both? So as I said in the video, I think I'm finding the Peg Plus feels like a bit more of a daily trainer type feel, but when you actually get into it, I'm getting exactly the same pace as these lighter ones. And yeah, the Next Nature and the Peg Plus is exactly the same weight. Peg Turbo is easily the lightest, but didn't fit me quite so well because of the more baggy nature of it. But yeah, just goes to show sometimes that weight is not everything. And the Peg Turbo one, perhaps in a way that fits me the best. Just thought the padded tongue helps. So yeah, hope you found this interesting. Like and subscribe on that, and see you next one then. Bye. Okay, so back at the former Star Inn in Bentworth and the Milestone here, which I've looked closely. I think it just says Bentworth at the top and London there at the bottom, but if I look at the back here, we do find out perhaps a bit more about what was going on. So Gerald O.B. Harding, 1923 to 1996, of Ivil's Cottages, chairman of the Bentworth Parish Council from 87 to 96. There is some more writing down the side here. Queen Elizabeth 77 maybe? London, what does that say? Some sort of date maybe? I'm not sure. I've just noticed the Milestone is there, and Ivil's house is literally this one here. So yeah, that's why the Milestone is so positioned as it is. So it's quite a nice place for it anyway. So that clears up that little mystery.